Hello everyone and welcome to this session on ALMA Analytics. In this session I'm going to be showing you how to modify the out-of-the-box reports, and for this session I'll be focusing on acquisitions reports. So we're going to look at three different out-of-the-box reports today. The first one is the Detailed Expenditures Report. I'm going to make some formatting changes to this report, and I'm going to give it a different focus by grouping it according to the supplier, and that will give me an idea of how much I've spent in the last 3 years with which vendors. The second report is also based on the Detailed Expenditure Report, and this time I'm going to end up with a list of invoices for a given fiscal period. The last report will look at my expenditure in terms of subject area. So I'm going to use the expenditure per classification report to see how much I've spent in a particular library in the different subject areas. So the first thing I want to do is to go into ALMA, and I'm going to open up the ALMA menu and open up the Design Analytics option, which will take me into the OBIEE environment. So as you know, the Catalog tab is where all the canned reports and all your saved reports are stored. The out-of-the-box reports are all kept under the ALMA folder, under the shared folders area there. And as I said, we're focusing on acquisitions reports, so I've got those open here in front of me. So we're going to start with the Detailed Expenditures Report. So I'm just going to run that as it is, and then we'll look at some of the things that we can do to change it. Okay, so my Detailed Expenditures Report includes information about the fund that was used, any reporting code, the titles, and various bits of information about the invoice and the price. If I want to make some changes to that, I need to go into the Criteria tab. And the first change I'd like to make is to filter out any transaction that took place more than 3 years ago. So I'm just reporting on the last 3 years worth of transactions of expenditures. So in the Criteria tab, I can see the fields that have been included, and I have some ready-made filters here that I can use to start modifying my report. So the first filter that I'm going to use is the Transaction Date filter. By clicking on the pencil icon, I open up the Edit filter, and I'm going to choose the option is greater than to choose the years that I'm going to limit to. So when I click on the drop-down list, I'm given a list of transaction date fiscal years. So I only want the last 3 years. So I'm going to say anything that's older than 2012. Clicking on the Results tab is going to run the report and give me the new details according to that filter. The next thing I want to do to make this report meaningful to the recipients is I'm going to just remove the vendor code and put in the vendor's name. So I'm going to go over to my criteria tab again. I can just remove the vendor code by clicking on the drop-down menu and then choosing the delete button. So that's gone. Now what I need to do is add the vendor name. So I'm going to drag that and put it at the end of the list of fields. And let's see how the report looks now. Okay, so we now have the vendor name at the end of the report. But what I want is for this report to actually be grouped by vendor. And the way that I can group a report by a particular field is by dragging that field over to the leftmost side of the report. And when I see the grey vertical line, I can drop that field and it will then appear over in the left-hand side of the report. And now we can see that the report is grouped according to vendor name. Now, the recipients of my report are not used to the terminology that's used in ALMA in this situation, so I want to change that word vendor to supplier, because that's how my institution describes their vendors. Now, to do that, I can go into the column properties option and to the column format tab. And what we see here are the folder headings and the column headings. If I want to customize those, I need to click the custom headings checkbox, and then I can just change that text to something that's more meaningful to my the people who are going to be receiving the report. Clicking on OK, that saves my change, and now I can see that vendor name has changed to supplier name. And there we can see that in the layout of the report. What I'd like to do next is to add some formatting to this field here, to the line price field, so that my users know that we're actually talking about a monetary amount. So once again, I'm going to go into the criteria tab, and I'm going to change the properties of that column. In this case, it's the data that I'm changing the formatting for. I need to click on the override default data format so that that becomes editable, and I'm going to add 2 decimal places there so that the report will show that amount as a monetary amount rather than a whole figure. And there we can see that that change has taken effect. At this stage, I've changed the report enough that I need to probably save it. So the save option is not available to me because this is an out-of-the-box report and I shouldn't be changing those. So I have the Save As option, which allows me to save my customized report to either my own folder or my institution folder, which will allow other users to see that report. My institution has decided to create subfolders for all the people who do designing of analytics. And here's my folder. And I'm going to change the name of my report to Detailed Expenditures by Supplier for 2012 to 2014. now I can see the name of the report has changed up here in the top left-hand corner. Okay, so I think I might just do a little bit of formatting. So I clicked on the pencil icon there under the results screen, and that takes me into a layout view. And this is where I can exclude fields from my report that I don't think are needed to be displayed in the report itself. For example, I don't want to display the percentage field in my report, so I hover over that, and when I get the four-headed arrow, I can drag that percentage field down into the excluded field and drop it when I see that the excluded field is outlined in blue. So that's removed that field from my report. I also don't need the quantity field, so I'm just going to drag that down into the excluded section. If I'm happy with that, I can click on Done. If I want to undo those changes, I can click on the Revert button, which will undo all the changes that I've just made. I'm going to go ahead and click on Done, and I can now see that those fields have disappeared from my report. The last thing I want to do is to total up these expenditures according to the supplier, according to the vendor. So again, I need to go into the edit view by clicking on that pencil icon again. And what I can see here is that for each of my fields, I have this icon here that will allow me to sum or create a total according to that particular field. So I'm going to create, first of all, a subtotal by vendor. When I click on that icon, I get the option to create that subtotal. So I'm going to create the subtotal so that it appears after each vendor section. And now you can see that I've got that green tick box there. When I click on Done, that should run the report and give me my subtotals. And here they are, subtotals for each vendor, so I can easily see how much I've spent per vendor in the last 3 years. And then I'm going to create a grand total for the whole report. And I can do that by adding a grand total under the columns and measures section here. So for all my fields, I'm adding this grand total here by clicking on the total icon and selecting after. And if I scroll down, unfortunately my screen layout doesn't show the scroll bar, which would make it much easier for me to scroll down. But I can see here at the bottom of my report, I have a grand total for all those transactions over the past 3 years. I'm just going to save that report one last time. And now I'm going to move on to the next report that I'm dealing with in this session. Let's move on to the second report, and I'm going to go back into the acquisitions folder and down to the reports subfolder. The second report is going to give me a list of invoices together with the total amount of the invoice for a specific fiscal period. So I'm going to start once again with the detailed expenditures report. So I'm clicking on Edit to run the report. Here's the report as it was created out of the box. So the first thing I want to add is the fiscal period start. So I need to add the fiscal period start date and add that to my report so that I can then filter on it. So I want to report just on the current fiscal year, which started in 2014 on the 1st of July. And I'm going to run the report just to see how the results have changed. So I actually only have one invoice there for 2014, and that's probably because the fiscal year has only just started. So I'm just going to change that to a previous year. So I do that by just going to my filter, clicking on the pencil icon, and just changing that to a previous year. So that should give us a few more results that we can actually work with. Okay. So here we now have our fiscal period that started on the 1st of July 2013. Now, I don't want to include that in my report, so the first thing I'm going to do is just to click on the Edit View and hide that by dragging it down to the excluded field. Okay, and that's disappeared now from the report. I want to add information now about the invoice line total price. So I have the line price, but I want the total price. So I'm going to go over, actually I'm going to click on the Criteria tab first, and I'm going to go over to my invoice line. Sorry, I'm going to go over to my fund transactions and get the invoice line total price from that area. I'm going to move it next to the fund transactions line price and then press the results tab so that I can see that information. So there's the information there about the invoice line total price. The next thing I want to do is filter out anything where the invoice isn't ready or is in draft mode or something like that. So I'm going to open up the invoice line section, and I'm going to bring across the status field. And just filter that field so that I can see what the different statuses are for invoices. And we can see that there are two options here. The invoice could be in review or it could be ready. So this report is only interested in invoices that are ready. So there I filtered according to that status. And here is the report that now has more meaningful information. The next thing I want to do is just remove some of these fields of information. So once again, I'm just going to go into the Edit View and just remove some of that information. So I don't need the percentage information. I'm going to drag that away and exclude it. I don't need the line price anymore. And I don't need to display the status information. Clicking on Done just saves those changes, and now my report is a bit more manageable in terms of what I can see. So the report's intention is to be a list of invoices. So what I want to do is group the report by invoice number. So I'm going to get hold of that invoice number field and just drag it over to the left-hand side of the report. And now I can see that the report's grouped by invoice number. So I'm just going to save that report now, clicking the Save As button. And I'm just going to change that because my report is focused now on invoices. So I now have a list of invoices and their total cost. The fiscal year was 2013. And I just need to make sure that I save it to the right folder. And click on OK. The last report that I'm going to look at in this session is going to give me information about how much I've spent in 3 specific libraries per subject area. And that's going to be using the expenditure per classifications report. So when I run the report, I can see that it's a report based on classification area, so different subject areas, and the expenditure is grouped by year. So the first thing I want to do is to select out 3 specific libraries to include in my report. So I'm going to the Criteria tab. And I already have a filter here for library name. At the moment, that means it's unfiltered. So I'm going to click on the pencil icon, change that operator from is prompted to is equal to or is in. And I'm going to use the binoculars feature to be able to multi-select the libraries that I'm interested in reporting on for this report. So I'm selecting the different libraries by holding down my Control key. So I'm going to select out the Graduate Library, the Main Library, and the Music Library, and then move those over to the Selected pane. Clicking on OK, I can see now that I have those 3 values in my filter field, and there's the filter changed for me down here. So I'm just going to run the report by clicking on the Results tab. And now the results should be filtered out just to those 3 libraries. Now, at the moment, I have no indication that this report is just based on 3 libraries. So what I need to do is add that information. So even though I have a filter by library name, the library name is not actually included in the information in the report. So what I need to do is add the library name field to the report and then run it. And what I can see now here is that I have the library name associated with each of the classification areas. But that doesn't really give me much meaningful information. So what I need to do is to move that field over to the left so that I'm actually grouping the information by library. And now I have a much better idea of what subject areas are being dealt with, purchased for in the different libraries. So there we can see how much was spent and what the kind of separation by classification is per library. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this label because I don't like the term classifications. So I'm going to go over to the Criteria tab and click on the column properties, and I'm looking at the column format. I want to customize the headings, and I'm just going to change that to Library of Congress class number. And there you can see that label's changed. And when I click on the Results tab, the report runs with the new heading. So I'm going to save that report. And just call it 3 libraries, expenditure per classification. And I'm just going to save that now to my folder. And then I can share it with people in my institution who might be interested in it. So what we've looked at are 3 acquisitions analyses that are available out of the box, and some of the things that you can do to change the focus of the reports and the formatting of the reports, and filter and limit by year or by library. Thank you for joining me.